Hey everyone, my name is Elly. My pronouns are she, her, and I have a very special guest on my channel today. Annie, if you could please introduce yourself and just tell whoever's watching anything you want them to know about you.
Absolutely. My name is Annie. My pronouns are she, they, and that's new actually.
That is really new. Oh my gosh. I didn't even know that.
This is actually the first time I'm saying that. Yeah, just because, yeah, and maybe I can just say that. I think I've been just going through a journey, and I really feel like everybody is a they. We've just been conditioned into a she or a him. There's like that weird imposter syndrome where you're like, you're not they enough to be a they, but fuck that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing with me and on my channel.
That was a decision.
Both Annie and I were homeschooled for much of our growing up years. And that is what we are here to talk about today. I have a few questions for you, Annie. What is your perception of why we were homeschooled?
Good question. My perception would be control and like sheltering from anything that may be considered secular, not just liberal, but just mainstream. Like even mainstream Christianity was too mainstream, making sure that you don't find anything out. No knowledge. Knowledge is bad. Do you feel like that is the case?
Yes, totally. I would agree with that. Yeah, the fact that we had no internet access, and on top of that, every single piece of
Me.
media, yeah, was completely controlled. One way to like teach your kids really weird ideas is to not expose them to any other ideas.
It also wasn't a secret. They had no problem saying that we don't want you to know what's out there in the world. We don't want you to be exposed to gay clubs at at school, like not like nightclubs, like school clubs for LGBTQ
Right.
kids, which would be all of us. And the phrase was, we don't want you to be of the world, we want you to be in the world. So, and for them, so many things were of the world. Like there was a very small list that were not of the world. My approach was take as much as you can and be as sneaky as possible about it so that you can continue to do those things. I really hated being homeschooled. I really hated a lot of things about our family growing up. I wish we were normal, you know, which really kind of was in my mind, the way that we were growing up was just sort of like the biggest thing that my imagination could think of, and all that I was really exposed to were just other versions of what we were doing, just a little bit more mainstream. I would tell people that I was homeschooled kind of under my breath and be like, listen, I'm homeschooled, but I'm not like them, okay? I would take a lot of pride when people would be like, you're homeschooled? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm so normal, huh? Even though I wasn't at all, like so still can be so awkward and weird, but I took a lot of pride in being like the most mainstream out of our family, or the most, you know, the most rebellious, the most like those crazy people. Who are they? And I pushed the envelope a lot more, the most, I would probably. Tell us about your experience. I think vastly different than mine.
Definitely. Seventh grade was honestly the worst homeschooling year for me. It was so lonely, so isolating. So I was just like constantly depressed. Our parents had basically handed me a newborn baby, which was our youngest sibling, and been like, here, kid, here's a baby. Take care of this baby for the next year. That was sort of seventh grade for me. So yeah, coming out of seventh grade, and that in retrospect, very traumatic year for me. I basically was just like, well, I'm not thrilled about this, but like mom and dad, they know the truth and they're teaching me this. So I guess it is the truth and I just have to accept it. Like you said, your approach was more like to take what you could. And I think mine was more to just accept what was given.
Oof. Yeah, definitely.
I would try my hardest to like really embrace it. Well, I would try to tell myself and others that I was proud of being homeschooled. I wasn't because like every time our cousins would come and stay the summer with us and like they were my window to the outside world, I would be super embarrassed of being homeschooled and I would try to say like, "Oh, I wish I could go to real school." But mom would shut that down right away once I had graduated, technically, even though I didn't really graduate, and was like working, people like my coworkers would constantly say, like, when they found out I was homeschooled, they'd be like, "Oh, what? You have such good social skills." And
Yes.
like, that was like 10 points of like
Yes.
self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I think I was on sort of a mission, like to show people, like, see, you can be homeschooled and still come out okay. See, me right here. It's not homeschooling, it's how you homeschool. Or I don't know, like I had this way of trying to evangelize for homeschooling because I didn't want to be ashamed of my parents and I didn't want them to feel ashamed.
I almost feel like you were a spokesperson. You like took on the role of spokesperson for homeschooled evangelical kids. I definitely feel like you had a very sunny way of describing your experience. Like it sounded pretty cool the way that you described it.
So what did that feel like for you to hear me talk about our experience so in such a Pollyanna way? That's what mom would always call me.
I think it was a couple things. I think there was shame for like, why don't I like this, as why can't I just accept in the same way? Not really knowing or understanding that you didn't really want it deep down either. But I think because you were so good at keeping up appearances and like just masking your pain and masking what was going on inside, and because of the way that like we were so close and we didn't have very many friends, so that made us even more close because we were our only options and we spent so much time together. Yeah, but I think there was a certain part of me that really wished that I could conform and be okay. And like, there were times where I would try to like be a model Christian. And I was like, yeah, let me try this out. And I'd be like, I can't. This is so hard and I don't like it. What was it like for you to see me kind of rebel?
I was really afraid for your soul.
Yes.
And
I do remember that for sure.
yes, I know we've talked about that many times. How much pressure that was on you to have your older sister like making it her, personal mission to like try to get you back onto the path. Like I felt like mom and dad weren't taking it seriously. Like I was just like, what is going on?
I know. I had 3 parents.
Doing a lot of like learning and reflecting in therapy and realized that I was parentified at a very young age. But I think that's very common for especially oldest daughters in these types of homeschool families.
Absolutely. It really is the norm. And our parents wanted more kids, even though they weren't able to. And it would have just increased if they had gotten their way.
What did a typical homeschooling day look like for you?
Well, let me tell you, it varied drastically. So for some years and certain days of the week, I would be going to a school, which was actually just a church with like card tables set up in front of like a whiteboard. And so like all the parents were the teachers. One of the parents was the headmaster. there was 100 people in the whole, actually less than 100 people in the whole school, and it was K through 12. The beginning of every book, the first chapter would be kind of like debunking what normal schools say. Evolution instead of evolution.
Yes.
I
remember like history was actually his story.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And we had to have like the frustrating aspect of like always changing the environment and like not having any structure. But
yes.
those messages were always the same. Like they were just like packaged maybe like a tiny bit differently, but it was like white supremacist, Christian nationalist propaganda, basically.
10th grade was completely home alone. And there were a lot of days where I was just coming up with my own curriculum. And then when I didn't feel like doing school, which was often, I didn't. And I would just do my own thing, like write music or write poetry, read books that had nothing to do with school.
Yes, I had full years where I was just home and I was given no guidance, no books until like maybe a few months before the school year was ending.
Yeah.
And it was just like housework and random, like, I think mom would think of them as like field trips, but basically it was just like running errands or like going to the park to push Ivor on the swing.
Our parents had no boundaries, or they didn't encourage schoolwork whatsoever. They would be like, that's fine, like take a month off of school. And I did in 5th grade. And like,
yeah,
mind you, this isn't real school. So
mom would have us doing like the independent study program, which meant that we were supposed to be submitting our grades at the end of the year. And it was always like a mad dash right before then to sort of like make stuff up and just like honestly lie, like basically lie.
There was like a whole year where like I got D's at the co-op school. So like it wasn't like I wasn't getting D's at school. I was getting D's because I wasn't showing up even there because I was like in a play. At the end of that year, I remember dad being like, oh, by the way, I put down A's for everything. And I was like, what? You did that? And I was like, but I didn't earn it. And he was like, well, you will. Like next year, you'll catch up.
Technically, I suppose they were supposed to be the teachers. If they're going to homeschool their kids, then they're in charge of teaching their children stuff in place of the teacher. But they just didn't at all. And I feel like that is really important to say. Like mom was always just like either pushing it off to someone else, or she was just like, she just didn't want to teach anything. Like she couldn't be bothered, honestly.
Well, I think also like her role as this evangelical mother in this like severe patriarchal system, she would constantly be like, well, I don't know that stuff. Like I can't teach. So she would often like say she wasn't smart enough. Yeah, it was just brutal. Like we were constantly in this weird catch-up game that didn't really matter. But to us, like we were, I feel like, more stressed about it than our parents. Like we were constantly stressed. Like I'm 3 years behind, and they'd be like, it's okay, you'll catch up in the summer. We were always doing work in the summer.
Yeah, and I was always begging mom to order our books.
Oh yeah.
So that we could, it was like every year would come around and I'd be like, okay, maybe this year's the year where we actually start on time and we can actually really, yeah.
Yeah.
Alas, never happens.
Did you have any kind of favorite subjects or like favorite things that you could do because you were homeschooled?
I mean, you and I had so many like just random little projects, and we would bring together like my love for writing and directing and filming and your love for acting and performing. When I look back on like homeschooling and honestly just our upbringing, like those are some of my favorite memories. And I think it really helped us honestly like get through a lot of the chaos and the abuse that was going on.
Absolutely. I definitely would agree. Those are definitely, I mean, those are the highlights of my childhood. So many things that, you know, we probably wouldn't have been able to do if we were well-rounded children.
Right.